Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'da, habibti fillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أسأل الله كريم رب العرش العظيم أن يتولنا في الدنيا والآخرة. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the Almighty to accept our good and forgive our evil, protect us from kulli su' makruh, bless us with ikhlas, with thabat. Before we begin, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, I'm going to see if I can find another light that will actually make it a bit more easy to see, inshallah ta'ala. Alhamdulillah. So continue on in our study of Umdah al-Ahkam. We reached the section of the treatise that discusses the ahkam pertaining to mas al-Khuffain. So the chapter, Bab mas al-Khuffain, the chapter of wiping over the Khuffs, meaning wiping over, for example, the leather socks, which is the asl. So in this chapter, there is a compilation. Imam Maqdisi, rahmatullahi alayhi, rahmatin wasiya, he compiled ahadith Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, which illustrate that wiping over the socks is something legislated in Islam. It is something which is accepted, and it is permissible, and it is in accordance with the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Islam. And the author mentions that it is bedalin, it's a bedel on Washington, meaning that it is, if you're unable to wash your feet, then that wiping over the Khuffs be in the place, or not necessarily that you are unable to, but if you choose to, and then of course there's conditions, and we'll get into some of those conditions in this group of ahadith. And this is something which is has a consensus from the scholars of Ahlus Sunnah, that are those who are considered in their ilm, in their knowledge, and this is based on the nusus al-sharia as-sahiha al-wadiha, meaning the divine text from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which illustrate very clearly that wiping over the Khuffs is something is Islamically legislated. And so those are just the main things we just wanted to introduce in this bab. So the first hadith al-Hadi wa Ashrun, the 21st hadith, meaning this is the 21st hadith out of the ahadith we've studied so far. And this hadith on Mughirah ibn Shu'bah قال kuntu, so there's a mistake in the print, كنت مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في سفر فأهويت لأنزع خفي فقال دعهما فإني أدخلتمهما طاهرتين فمسح عليهما. In this hadith, the hadith of Mughirah ibn Shu'bah, radiyallahu ta'ala, he said, I was with the messenger or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam during travels, while he was traveling, safar. فَأَهْوَيْتُ لِأَنْزَى خُفَيْ. So I wanted to, serve the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and take off his khuffain, because he's wearing khuffs. So I wanted to take them off for him, so that way we could make wudu. And he said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam responded, said, da'uhuma, leave them. فَإِنِّي أَدْخَلْتُهُمَا طَاهِرَتَيْن. For verily I entered them in a state of purification, meaning he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in tahara, and they were pure, his socks. فَمَسَحَ عَلَيْهِمَا. So then he wiped over them, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this hadith, which differs with the opinion or the viewpoint and the aqidah and the methodology and the fiqh of the Rafida Shia, who reject this, or probably all the Shia sects reject that, not just the Rafida, and also the Khawarij. Some of the Khawarij also reject wiping over the Khuffs. And this hadith, it shows us that it is legislated to wipe over the khuffain whenever you need to make a wudu. And wiping them is only one time, unlike when we're washing our feet. So we wipe over our khuffs, we just do that once, okay? And we wipe over the top, not underneath. And something very important about wiping over the khuffs, and why you'll find it in some aqidah books, such as perhaps in Usul Sunnah, but you find it definitely in Sharh Sunnah lil Imam Barbahari. And that is because it became a sign of the people of the Sunnah, wiping over their socks. And the only ones who differ with that, as we said, were the Shia and the Khawarij. So then it became known that these tawa'if, these sects, they differ with Ahl Sunnah in this. So it became a sign of Ahl Sunnah. And this is why Imam Barbahari, he mentions that in his book, Sharh Sunnah. Now, from this hadith, also, we learn something else. One of the ahkam from this hadith, ishtirat al-tahara li masal al-khufayn, that it is a condition that you are in a state of tahara when you wear your socks. So for example, say if right now I have socks. If I took these socks off and I broke my wudu and I have no socks on, then I put my socks back on and I want to make wudu. It's time for salat. I want to make wudu. Can I wipe over my socks now or not? So we'll see if anybody's with us. Can I wipe over my socks? Hopefully the issue is clear. Can I wipe over the socks or not? So someone could just say yes or no. Actually, I can't even see. My eyes are bad. So it looks like there's no response. Anyway, I cannot wipe over the socks. Oh, somebody said yes. Wrong. May Allah bless us and you. Because maybe you didn't hear exactly what I said. So if I take off my socks and I'm not in tahara, okay, I broke my wudu and I've taken my socks off. Now I want to make wudu. And then I put my socks back on, but I'm not in a state of tahara. And then salat comes up, the time for salat comes, and I want to make wudu. Do I have to take off my socks or can I wipe over them? You cannot wipe over them under those circumstances, because a shart, a condition for wiping over the socks. One of the conditions, a condition meaning it's something before that it has to be in place before you can do the act of worship. So a condition for wiping over the socks is that you entered into your socks in a state of tahara, in a state of purification. Okay? Then when you break your wudu and the next prayer comes up, say it was, we'll give a very clear issue, but say for the next salat, and you had entered your socks in a state of tahara, and then you broke your wudu, and then now it's time for the next prayer. So when you make wudu, you don't have to take your socks off because you entered into them in a state of purity. So that's what I wanted to highlight, because there's so many other masail, and we're going to get into some of them with regard to Masa al-Khuffayn. So hopefully that's clear, inshallah ta'ala. And this is in part evidenced because the Prophet ﷺ said in this hadith, he said, فَإِنِّي أَدْخَلْتُهُمَا طَاهِرَتَيْنِ, for verily I entered into them, meaning his Khuffs, when he was in a state of purity, so I don't know if the tahiratain he's talking about his feet or he's talking about the Khuffs, but ala kulli hal, we know both have to be, you have to be in a state of tahara, and of course your Khuffs cannot be najis, they cannot be made out of najasa or anything like this. Now, also from this hadith, another benefit is that we learn that it is recommended istihbab khidmatul ulama wal fudala, that it's also from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to serve, to be serving to the scholars. Not that you're just carrying their bread and stuff like this, but maybe you're in a gathering and it's time to pour tea, so you offer the sheikh tea, or you just give precedence and kind of honor the sheikh, the elders, the fudala. So that could be even leaders, it could be people of status and manzil. That's from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the reason Sheikh Ali Bassam rahmatullah alayhi, he got that from this hadith is because this hadith, Mughirah ibn Shu'bah was going to serve the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and take off his Khuffs sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Those are some of the main benefits of this hadith, and we'll move on to the next hadith. In the hadith of Athani wa Ashrun, the 22nd hadith, عن حذيفة بن يمان رضي الله تعالى عنه قال كنت مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في سفر فبال وتوضأ ومسح على خفيه. So in this hadith, this is the hadith of Hudhayfa bin Yaman رضي الله تعالى عنه. He said, I was with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam during travel, and akramakumullah, he used the restroom, and meaning he broke his wudu, and then he made wudu, وَمَسَى عَلَى خُفَيْهِ, and he wiped over his khufs, his socks. So this shows us, that means that when the Prophet ﷺ was traveling, and this is indicated from the last hadith, that he was in a state of tahara. He had wudu, and that is why he sallallahu alaihi wasallam wiped over his khufs, because as we mentioned from the last hadith, that a condition of a condition of wiping over the khufs is that you entered into your khufs or your socks in a state of purification, in a state of tahara. Okay? Now, from this hadith is bayan hukm mas al-khufayn. This hadith, it illustrates the hukum, the ruling with regards to wiping over the socks, that it is something mashru'. It is something legislated. Limada, because the Prophet ﷺ did it, we already know. Also, some of the things that we can benefit from this this hadith. Sheikh Ali Bassam, he mentions مشروعية المس على الخفين في سفر ومدة المس على الخفين والعمامة في سفر 3 أيام بلياليها. نعم. ومدة المس للمقيم يوم وليل أي 24 ساعة. طيب, this is very beautiful. I don't remember reading this faida from the Sheikh before, even though we studied it. We didn't study it with the Sheikh, but we studied the Sheikh's book. But this is an excellent benefit that we gain from this hadith. So he mentions that this hadith illustrates that it is legislated to wipe over the Khuffs during travel. And the amount, the time period for wiping over the socks and the imama, okay, if you're wearing an imama like a turban, and some of the, the Hanabila, they make a condition that your turban, it needs to have a veil, like a tail, hang down like they do in Sudan and some other places. Not all of them. Some people have imamas without it. But I think Sudan generally, they usually have the veil. They usually have like a tail there. So ala kulli hal, that if you want to, if you're traveling, so this is a faida, if you're traveling and you're wearing socks and or an imama, the turban, then you can wipe over your imama and your khuffain for 3 days and nights. 3 days and the nights of those days. Okay? 3 days and 3 nights. And this is also in accordance to a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then, وَالْمُدَّةَ الْمَسْلِ الْمُقِيم, that the amount of time that you can wipe over your socks or the imama, if you are not a traveler, like you're in your place of residence or what have you, is 24 hours, 1 day. 1 day in the night. So, which means 24 hours. Now, this is very important. He brings up a mas'ala, and this is very important, and I'll just give you the, as he says, asah aqwal. He gives the most correct viewpoint here. So, this is very important because a lot of people don't know when to begin your wiping over your khuffs. When does your 24 hours begin? So, let's say today, in fact, well, no, I've changed socks and I've done a lot of stuff throughout the day. But let's just give an example. Say you get up in the morning and you didn't wear socks to bed. You got up in the morning and you made wudu, washed your feet and everything. And then you put your socks on. Then you pray, you go and you pray Fajr, and you go back to bed with your socks on. Then you get up and, you do some activity, go to work, whatever, and you go and you pray Salat al-Dhuhr. So when does your 24 hours begin? And you go to pray Dhuhr, so you make wudu and you wipe over your socks. When does your 24 hours begin? From the most correct goal. So we'll just see if we can have a little munaqishah here. When does the 24 hours begin that you can start wiping over your socks? Is it from Fajr, when you got up and you made wudu and you put on your socks? Or is it from Dhuhr? We'll just give 5 seconds and see what somebody says. If anybody answers. From Fajr, good. Okay, mashallah, may Allah preserve you. I heard 2 answers from Fajr. May Allah bless you and preserve you. No. Jazallah khairin, Jet City Jones. I already know who Jet City Jones is my Habib. Taib, I'm glad, mashallah. طالب العلم. So, نعم. So you begin wiping your socks من أول المس. From the first time you wipe. That's when the 24 hours begin. So, we put our socks on at Fajr. We got up, we made wudu, then we put some socks on. We broke our wudu after we prayed and, went to bed and so forth. And then we got up, we still had socks on, we wiped our socks. Your 24 hours begins from the first time you wiped, not from when you put your socks on. From awwal al-masah, the first time you wiped over your socks. So that's a big faida that we need to know, that we actually would count the time from your first mess. So now that we're into that issue, let's get into some other juicy issues. And mainly my view or my studies is going to be more so from the Hanabila madhab. But so we know about the awwal mess. We know about the first time we wipe, and then 24 hours from there. Well, what if, and according to different madhabs, there's some differences here. So what if I wore my socks at Fajr, and my first time I wiped was Dhuhr, okay? And then Maghrib comes around that day, or better yet, if I wiped at Dhuhr, and then that means the next day, 24 hours, would be when my time, I couldn't wipe over them anymore. Okay, after that 24 hours. So what happens if I still didn't break my wudu? I prayed Dhuhr, that next Dhuhr, and then Asr comes in. Okay, and I had wiped, I did my last wiping for Dhuhr. Now it's more than 24 hours. So, because now it's coming to Salat al-Asr, and I didn't, and I haven't taken off my socks, and I still have wudu, can I pray Salat al-Asr? And, can I pray Salat al-Asr? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, that you one day and, that 24 hours. Okay, Jazakallah khairan. So the person said, yes, absolutely. Now you can. And when I was studying this mas'ala, because again, the Prophet ﷺ gave us that 24 hours, that one day and one night. But we do not know that al-mudda, that time being something that invalidates your wudu. Time that you have, went beyond the time does not invalidate your wudu. Now, I believe in some other madhabs, from what I recall, I think that Hanafis might say, no, you cannot pray at that. You need to make a fresh wudu. You need to take your sock off, even though you're in tahara. This is what I recall. I could be incorrect, but what I recall from when we studied this mas'ala. The point is that time does not expire your wudu. It's not known as one of the nullifiers of wudu. So that is why you can do that. So that's just a fa'idah, a mas'ala that comes up out of that. Now, another benefit, this is something else that we gain from this hadith and from our studies, is that there are two conditions for wiping over your socks, your khuffs, or your imama, or your turban. These are the general two conditions. One, as we said, is that you have to enter into those. You have to enter into your imama or your socks or your khuffs when you were in a state of tahara. You have to be in a state of tahara. Secondly, for wiping over the socks, is that it has to be covering the places you have in the wudu. It has to be covering your places of wudu. So, for example, if you had a major, and even this is a difference, and I studied with the Sheikh Abdullah in Yemen, and it changed my mind. My view is a little bit different, but anyway, according to the Hanabila, the Hanbali madhab, that if it doesn't, for example, if you have a hole in your sock and it's like a big hole, and then it's not covering all those areas you would have for your wudu, then it would be impermissible to wipe according to the Hanabila. But I believe, and this is the view that I hold, that it's a more correct view, and this is what Sheikh Abdullah taught us when we're in Sheher, is that during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, some of the Sahaba, or many of them, there was many that were very poor, and they had holes in their Khuffs and their garments or what have you. So, and we don't have any dalil to suggest that shart is in place for that it has to be covering those places of wudu. So, ala kulli hal, that's just min bab fa'idah. So for me, myself, I hold that view because during the time of the Sahaba, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, some of them, they were known for, they were very poor and they had holes in some of their garments and they still wiped. We don't know of anything to suggest other than that. So I hold that view that it's still okay, even if you had a big patch on your heel or something, which was a hole on your sock, that you can still wipe. And la bas, if someone else has the other view, then this is good. Like the Hanabila or this is kind of where that ijtihadat and that understanding of the nusus, as well as the issue of ijtihadat, and the Sheikh was mentioning, hey, this is how the Sahaba were, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in. They had holes, some of them had holes in their socks and so forth, and they still wiped. Now, so that's just min bab fa'idah. The next, I thought there was another hadith on wiping, but the next bab, we'll go ahead and get into this next bab, this next chapter. Bab fil madi wa ghayri. Bab fil madi wa ghayri. So this is the chapter of the chapter of ejaculation, akramakum Allah, and other than it. So meaning now we're moving into the Shaykh compiled these hadith in Tahara with regards to those things which nullify the Nawaqid al-Tahara or Nawaqid al-Wudu, those things which invalidate your wudu. So he mentions al-Madi, and al-Madi, of course, this is basically like akramakum Allah, it's sperm, it's ejaculation that you have from either from sexual excitement, and sorry, wala yaqibuha futur. So this is actually premature. Al-Madi is the premature ejaculation, and al-Mani is the is sperm. Okay, al-Mani is sperm. So that is the full ejaculation. This is like premature ejaculation, akramakum Allah, and both of them are a type of najasa. One requires that you make ghusl, and the other requires that you clean yourself. You clean, akramakum Allah, for the man, you clean your private part, and then you just make wudu. Okay, so that is for the premature ejaculation, and for the full ejaculation, for full sperm, akramakum Allah, then you must make ghusl. Okay, so that's the introduction of this chapter. So then he begins hadith athalith wa ashrun, the 23rd hadith. عن علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله تعالى عنه قال كنت رجلا مذائن فأستحييت أن أسأل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لمكان ابنته مني فأمرت المقداد بن أسود فسأله فقال يغسل ذكره ويتوضأ. وللبخاري أغسل ذكرك وتوضأ. ولمسلم توضأ وأنبه farjak. So this hadith, the hadith of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala, immense fawaid. And again, this is supposed to be a review, not we're going into depth in these ahadith, but some of these hadith, we just can't just miss some of these immense fawaid. So we'll just try to highlight a few important things here. So this is the first hadith in this chapter about the, these nullifiers of tahara, of purification, and things that, violate your wudu. So Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala, and he related this hadith. He said, Kuntu rajulan mida'in. He said, I was a man, I used to be a person who was mida'in, meaning, as the scholars mentioned, kathrata midi, that he had a lot, akramakumullah, he would have pre-ejaculation a lot, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And then he said, فَأَسْتَحْيَيْتُ. So I had shyness. I was very shy. فَأَسْتَحْيَيْتُ أَنْ أَسْأَلَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ لِمَكَانِ ابْنَتِهِ مِنِّي. And he said, and I was shy to approach and ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam due to my relationship with his daughter. With Fatima. And he said, فَأَمَرْتُ الْمِقْدَادِ ibn Aswad. So I ordered or asked Miqdad ibn Aswad radiyallahu ta'ala to ask him, but not, for me, not to point that it was me, but, to ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about this issue. Okay. فَقَالَ, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam responded, فَغْسِلْ ذَكَرَهُ وَيَتَوَضَّ. That a person in this situation, they should wash, akramakumullah, this, because this is a male, he should wash his private part and make wudu. So that lets us know. And then there was other narrations, and they basically mean the same thing. Wash your, akramakumullah, your male organ, and then make wudu. So this shows us, ahabati fillah, from this hadith, this gives us the hukum, the ruling for midi. When a person has premature ejaculation, this gives us the ruling with regards to premature ejaculation. And we learn from this hadith that this premature ejaculation, that the way that we purify ourselves is we clean our private part and then we make wudu. And that suffices. You don't have to make ghusl for that. This hadith has many, many benefits. And as far as some ikhtilaf al-ulama, we'll mention some differences of the opinions of the scholars. So the Hanabila and the Malikiyah, some of the Malikiyah, they believe that it's an obligation to wash the private part after this. And they use this hadith and other than this hadith as evidence for that. And then this ikhtilaf we don't even need to really go into, but that was just from Bab of Faida, that some of the other madhabs do not believe that it is obligatory to wash the private part before with the medi. And some of the benefits of this hadith is that we learn, because the Prophet ﷺ said, wash your private part, is that this that al-madi is a type of najasa. It's a type of najasa. And that it is an obligation to wash it. And of course, this is the view of Sheikh Ali Bassam, and I hold that view as well, and the view of the Hanabila and some of the Malikiyah. However, another faida, and we get this from another hadith that's coming up, is that ya'fa an yasirihi bisabab mushakka. So this is very good. Kama dhakara ba'da Ahl al-Ilm. So that if there is a little bit, for example, you washed yourself and there's just a tiny bit of still kind of like maybe something in akramakumullah in your underwear or something, in your garment, your undergarments, that there's just a tiny little, you hardly notice it. I mean, you tried to wash and it just kind of left a little stain, if you will, that this is excused. This is pardoned. And we'll get into that as we get into those other hadith, some of them that are coming up pretty sooner rather than later. So that shows it, that little bit of, although it's a type of najasa, that which is yasir, yafu anhu. That which is very little, it's excusable. Another benefit of this hadith is that there is also mention in other ahadith. And the first time I had ever heard this, aside from this study, but Sheikh Suleiman Rahili said this, and I was just so shocked because I'd never studied that. And I remember we were studying a book with him and talking about Tahara, and he said that he believes that that's the most correct view. And I was like, wow, that is kind of a little difficult, but there are other narrations that illustrate this. So, min bab al-faida is that in some other ahadith, they mention وَغُسْلُ أُنْثِيَيْن. وَغُسْلُ أُنْثِيَيْن, meaning akramakumullah, that you wash not just your, as a man, your penis, akramakumullah, but you also wash your testicles. Untiyain. And that's mentioned in another hadith. So that was the first time I ever heard that. Sheikh Suleiman Rahili mentioned, and he said he mentioned that he believed that was the most sound view. And I was like, wow, that was heavyweight. Now, those are some of the main benefits of that hadith. There's other things. Another last faida. This is important because this could actually happen. He said, "Annahu," Sheikh Ali Bassam mentions, he says, "Annahu la yakfi fi izalat al-madhi al-istijmar bil-hijara kal-bol bel la bud min al-ma." So Sheikh Ali Bassam, rahmatullahi alayhi, he mentions that it isn't exactly like making istijmar. You know, that, for example, istijmar is when you use the stones or something in its place. And you, for example, akramakumullah, you went to the restroom and then you cleaned your private parts with the rocks, okay, with stones. And as we mentioned yesterday, the best is combining it with water and rocks, or water in tissue or whatever in its place. So Sheikh Ali Bassam, he mentions that it is not sufficient to remove the mevi to just to use stones. Okay, he said la bud min al ma, absolutely necessary to have water. So that is just a fa'idah there. In the next hadith al-Rabi wal-Ashrun, this is the 24th hadith, and maybe we'll stop there inshallah ta'ala, or let's see, because the other hadith is also, that's a beautiful hadith. Yeah, we'll mention these last two hadith. So this is hadith 24. On Ubadah ibn Tamim, عن عبد الله بن زيد ابن عاصم المازني قال شكي إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رجل يخيل إليه أنه يجد شيء في الصلاة فقال لا ينصرف حتى يسمع صوت أو يجد ريحا. In this beautiful hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the hadith of Ubadah ibn Tamim, who narrated on Abdullah ibn Zayd ibn Asim al-Mazini, radiyallahu ta'ala, who said, قال شكي إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رجل. So a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he was complaining. You know, he had a complaint. رجل يخيل إليه أنه يجد شيء في صلاة. So he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam complaining and saying, Ya Rasulullah, basically, I found something in my prayer. You know, I have something that's messing up my prayer or breaking my prayer, or invalidating my prayer, you could say in the meaning. Yajida shayfi salat. Okay. The Prophet ﷺ responded, said, La yansarif, don't leave the prayer. Hatta yasma'a sotan o yajida rihan. Do not leave the prayer unless you hear a sound, or you felt, or you smelled something. You heard or you smelled something. Very powerful hadith. And this hadith, it clarifies the hukum ashak fil hadith. Bayan hukum ashak fil hadith. So this hadith, it clarifies for us, it makes it the hukum, the ruling with regards to having doubt about whether you pass, whether you, especially during prayer, whether you pass gas or not, whether you broke your salat or not, you invalidated and you need to go make wudu. So this hadith is azim because it is one of the evidences for one of the qawaid in the shar', which is that la yazul shak bil la yazul yaqeen bishak, la yazul yaqeen bishak, that which is certain is not removed by that which is doubtful. So in this situation, the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, there are several qawaid here. Also, before we go into the explanation, let's mention some of the other qawaid that are fawaid for us. Under this qaida also is yaqeen la yazul bishak, or la yazul bishak, which we just mentioned, that certainty is not removed by doubt. Also, anna man kana ala al-amal fi asl huwa ala dhalik. So whenever a person is on something in its origin, then he's on that. Doubt doesn't remove that, because that in the origin, you were praying and, your prayer is sound. You'd made wudu before. This is like, you could say, the asl there. Unless there comes strong evidence, and the Prophet ﷺ gave us that evidence to invalidate that. And that's why you don't pay attention to the shak. You don't pay attention to the doubt. So unless you smell something, or unless you hear something, because sometimes the shaitan, sometimes there are things that you might feel a little something, like it almost left you. Okay, and that's true. Like, akramakum Allah, maybe the shaitan, and I've heard Mashaykh mention that it's like a shaitan has blown something up there or whatever. Okay, but it didn't escape. You did not pass gas. You did not break your salat. You only break your salat, and the Prophet ﷺ gave us those dawabit, those criterion, that you either hear something or you smell something. Okay, but if it is completely, you're certain you broke your wudu, because sometimes you may not smell and you may not hear, but you broke your wudu. You're going into ruku and you were kind of trying to hold your bathroom, you were just trying to not make wudu again for salat, and you actually go into sujood or ruku, and it actually, halas, boom, it comes out. You pass gas, and you may not have heard it, you may not have smelt it, but you're certain. So if you're certain, then obviously. But here's the Prophet ﷺ is giving us those criterion for when you have doubt. If you have doubt, you're not really sure, the Prophet ﷺ said, La yansarif, don't leave the prayer until you smell something or hear something. So that is an immense faida, because so many people struggle with that and struggle with those issues during their prayer, and not knowing whether they broke, especially if they are struggling with things like OCD or other challenges. You'll find a lot of questions about that. But here it's very beautiful that the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam kind of answered that and laid that foundation for us on how to deal with that. And another qaida, another principle. So all of these are what are known as qawaid fiqhiyya. These are fiqh principles, but these are not like usul of fiqh, but these are fiqh principles, which is a little bit different than usul of fiqh, which in another dars maybe we'll talk more in depth. But anyway, these are like general principles in the Sharia. So one of the general principles, as Sheikh Ali Bassam mentions with regards to this hadith, he says, Al-Qaida al-Amma Wahiya. So he says the general principle, it is أن الأصل بقاء ما كان على ما كان. So the asl of something is that it stays in its regular state. Al-asl baqa ma kana ala ma kan. So that means something, it's aslan, it stays in its origin. Let's give an example so that way we know in another mas'ala, but the principle. So I have a rug here, you can't see, but I have this rug here, a brown rug. Now, it could use to be shampooed, but it's okay. I vacuum it and do the best I can. But anyway, if someone were to say, hey, I'm not going to pray on that because, you know, it's possible your cat came in here, or one of your chickens, or your child when it was younger, or, you know, whatever. There's a possibility, or possibility you walked in here and there's a little najasa on your foot, and, you know, it's probably in there, so I want a sajada. I want something to pray over that. Well, one of the responses amongst the many that we could give to this individual is we could say, well, the qaida is this, my brother. Al-asl baqa ma kana ala ma kan. The origin is that it stays in the state that it was, meaning this was pure. This was brand new. We had no doubt that it was tuhur, that you could pray on it. There's no najasa or anything. That's the asl. So we don't now have doubt and say, well, maybe a bird flew in and it had a dead mouse in its mouth. It was a hawk, and the dead mouse was a rat, and then it fell on the carpet, and its blood is there, and some of its najasa is there. No, we don't speculate and make up a fairy story and have anything that's doubt from the shaitan. The asl, al-baqa ma kana ala ma kan. Okay? So the asl is it stays upon its origin. So that's very important. Likewise, even on the ground, when you're out in the woods or anywhere, a lot of times if I don't need a sajada or I don't have a sajada, and my Habib will know, because we hike and stuff like this, we go out and, you know, if we don't have a sajada and we don't have a tarp or some paper or something, sometimes we just pray and we're on the carpet of the woods. You know, and there might be moss bed there, it might be leaves, it's all kind of stuff, old dead bugs and stuff. It doesn't matter because all that is pure anyway. It's all pure. It has no effect on your salat. It might be more comfortable to have a sajada or something, but if we don't have it, for example, that it's perfectly okay. And you would not speculate and say, well, we can't eat bear. There's a bear could have probably pooped there 6 years ago, a month ago, and it just is not there. We can't see it. No, that's not how Islam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't call us to that, to that type of paranoia and that type of speculation. We operate, and this is the ease of the shar', we operate with that which is present, and we don't speculate, and we do not let doubt remove our certainty. Okay? La yazul al-yaqeen bi-shak. Or shak la yazul al-yaqeen. You can say it either way. That doubtfulness does not remove certainty, or certainty is not removed by doubt. Okay? Those are other qawaid as well in the Sharia. Another faida, so Sheikh Ali Bassam, he mentions with this hadith, he says tahrim. He says it's haram to leave the prayer for in lighayri sabab bayyin. it is haram to leave the prayer without a very, very clear reason of doing so. Meaning you're sure that you broke your wudu or something like this. But you can't just get up and out of the prayer, for just any kind of reasons or just for a little bit of doubt. So hopefully that gives in hope. Hopefully that can strengthen the hearts of some of our brothers and sisters who suffer with those kind of difficulties with regards to those things in waswas. And those are some of the main fawaid in this hadith, and there are so many others. I think this next hadith we'll save for the next sitting. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil, protect us from kulli su'in wa makruh. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. If there are any questions, we will try to deal with them. Bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Now, see, we can run some glasses. Probably not. Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. When you put them on. No. What advice for an aspiring student of knowledge? Advice for an aspiring student of knowledge, as we've talked about it a lot. I've done whole videos about it, but I would say just in general that having sincerity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost, ikhlas lillah, that you are seeking the knowledge to come closer to Allah, to learn how to worship Allah better, to, if it is to help your community and your family and yourself, to raise your level of knowledge. That this is all a part of, the ikhlas lillah, the sincerity of doing it to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's probably one of the most important things. Also, avoiding sins. Also, striving. Men jidda wajid. Whoever wants something, they have to, whoever puts energy into something, they're going to get a result. So if you want to seek knowledge, you don't want to just aspire only, meaning you don't want to sit back and just dream about it. And you don't want to sit back and just think about it. And you don't want to sit back and just talk about it, but rather you want to strive to elevate your knowledge, to go on the journey of knowledge, whether that is, whether it's online, whether you're actually traveling, whatever the case may be, whether you're moving to a place where there's a lot of durus and a lot of activity, that is what you want to be upon, striving to elevate your knowledge by making real effort. Then also, I would advise, and I think we just talked about this yesterday, is that also being cautious of inqita, meaning being cautious of stopping seeking the knowledge. So, for example, if you start a grammar book or whatever, say we start this book. If I stop all of a sudden, we don't even finish Tahara, and I say, well, that's it. I think we'll just, I'll just start a new book. That inqita, now we have a little bit of momentum. It's a little bit of fiqh, and it's a little bit of ahkam, hadith. So there's fawaid there, and it would be nice to finish at least those fawaid of tahara, of purification, to finish that one chapter that we set out to do. But if not, then we'll stop, and then maybe some people will never go into some of that knowledge, because maybe that's the only time they are studying or they get the opportunity to study or something. So it's very important to try to complete books, complete lessons, complete your studies. Don't start studying Arabic and, for example, the Medina books, and you stop with book 1. And then you take a year off and then you start studying again, and then you have to go right back to the beginning of book one. And this happens to a lot of us, and it is very damaging to your journey of seeking knowledge. So those are some of the pieces of advice I can offer with regards to seeking knowledge. Now, how should I deal with my parents? Well, we've talked a lot about that. About this question has been asked a lot, and you deal with your parents with gentleness. You know, you don't command them, you respect them, and even if they there's difficulty with them and challenges, it's on you to be patient, plain and simple. What are the proofs for cloth socks falling under the same ruling as Khuffain? MashaAllah. Excellent question. So this is, obviously there's a difference of opinion, and that Ahnaf, the Hanafis, they do not allow that. They don't accept it. And I'm not sure the Malikis and some of the other madhabs. But this is a type of, I believe it's like a type of qiyas, you could say. That it's a type of analogy or something, because it's the same, as Khuffs. For Khuffs, they, they're leather. They, they have, it's a different material, but they serve the same function. So I believe it's a type of qiyas, what we say qiyas sahih. It's not that we have a proof, a text that says, that you could use a cloth socks or some other material, but rather this comes from a qiyas sahih, sound analogy, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Now, how does one, akramakallah, clean themselves with stones without harming themselves? Well, I mean, that's the point. The Sharia doesn't cause you to harm yourself, so you never should be tearing yourself and cutting yourself and smashing yourself. It should be plain and simple. You're trying to remove the najasa, and that which you are. So you do your best to do that. You do your best to do that. You don't be excessive that you're going to, for example, when you brush your teeth or you use a miswak. Well, that does not mean you have to tear your gums up. That does not mean you have to use the miswak until you bleed, until you have knocked a tooth or scarred or scraped your tooth. No, but you gain the benefit from that. Likewise with tahara, with the purification of yourself, you use the stones, for example, especially if you don't have water. If you don't have water, because the water is more purifying, okay? But the best is if you can do both. But for example, there are many times I'm outdoors and I may not have much water, or I may have finished my water. I may have drank all of my water, unless I'm blessed and I'm near a river or something like this. But I may not have that. So I may end up using rocks, and sometimes there may not even be rocks. I might be in a place where it's more forest, and I end up having to use leaves and like some sort of sticks and things like this. And you use as many as it takes to purify yourself, to clean yourself, so where you're not finding any more, akramakumullah, najasa. And you fear Allah as much as possible, and with that you do not try to harm yourself, and you also follow the other adab, as we mentioned, that you use witr, because the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, "Fida stajmara fil yutir." If you make istijmar, meaning with the rocks and stuff, then make it an odd number. And the least amount of the odd number for istijmar and so forth is 3. Not 1, but 3. So you will at least use 3 rocks, or 3 leaves, or a rock and a leaf or 2, or whatever it takes to make those odd, to make sure it's odd. So the goal is not to harm yourself, so you just try to clean the najasa. You don't have to, and by being harder with yourself, akramakum Allah, is not going to make the najasa go away better necessarily. So, you know, we should be very cautious with that now. I think we've got these little creatures trying to come in, these like termite things. It's because all the lights I have in here, so pretty soon I'm going to turn these lights off here so they don't come in through my netting and stuff like this. But anyhow, can we wipe over shoes or boots? Yes, you can. You can wipe over your sandals. You can wipe over your shoes. You can wipe over your boots. And the same ahkam, it applies that you have to enter into those things in a state of purification. So, for example, when it comes to the boots, say, for example, you had wudu and you put your socks on. Then you broke your wudu and you wiped over your socks. And then you have your shoes and you decide to pray in your shoes. And you prayed in your shoes. You know, you were in tahara. So you entered your boots in a state of tahara. Okay. So if you are going to, so say you break your wudu and you decide you're going to pray in your shoes. You know, you're at work, you're at some other place, and you're going to pray in your shoes, so you can just wipe over your shoes. You know, maybe you're outside, whatever the case may be. No. Can we use green leaves? Is that the only thing? No, it doesn't matter if it's green leaves or red leaves. It's fall, it's winter. It doesn't matter the color of the leaves, but you can use it. And that's just what I just said. And as far as saying nature's toilet paper, I mean, I don't know. Anyway, is eating a big meal at once permissible if one hasn't eaten the whole day? I mean, if you want to eat one meal, the thing is, don't be greedy. Don't be over whatever. I mean, don't make Islam hard. I mean, I don't understand. What's the big deal? Eat, just eat food. Okay. If you want to eat one meal, that's what you do. And that's what's healthy for you. Then eat one meal. Okay. And if it's a bigger meal, eat it. Just don't be wasteful. Don't be excessive. Eating and throwing up, and then you got to eat more. No, that's that's haram. I think that's those kind of things are clear things. Ask those things that are beneficial for you. I don't know. To me, it seems common sense, but I don't know. I could be wrong. It could be me. Forgive me if I'm being harsh, but this being invaded by termites or something. No. Is one time enough for water for istinja? Yeah, so the water you're using when you're making istinja with water, you're trying to clean the najasa. So it's not about 3 times, 4 times or anything. You're just trying to, if you're using a squirt bottle or you're using water, you're just removing those impurities. So whatever it takes to remove the impurities. Now, doesn't mean you have to squirt 3 times or something like this. No. You can kill the bugs if they are bothering you and if they are a harm to you. No. They're pests. We call them pests. Is it true that shoe doesn't cover the ankle? Then you have to remove the shoes. This goes back to what we said before, that, okay, especially in the Hanabila, they say that the shoe or the sock or, whatever you're going to wipe over, that it needs to be satirin. It needs to be covering the area of that you would wipe for wudu, that you would clean for wudu. Okay. So, now, if you hold that view, and la shak, it's a safer view, then yeah, if your shoe is way down, but most shoes, I think, they usually cover our ankles and stuff like that, so they usually cover the places that you would make for wudu. So I don't know. I can't imagine. I guess if you have some little things, but I don't know. Allahu alam. Now, and then also, of course, you could wipe in your sandals, so which has openings and so forth. Are you familiar with Ustad Abu Hakim Bilal Davis and Ustad Abu Mu'adh Taqweem Aslam? So I've seen the name of Abu Mu'adh. I don't know him, and I don't think I've ever seen him. But Abu Hakim, I saw him, and I believe I met him one time in Medina when he came for Umrah, because I remember, Salafi pubs, they came, I attended a few times when they came. They would come for Umrah, and they would be in Medina, sometimes visiting different mashayikh and stuff like this. But I recall once that he came, it was him and Abu Khadija and a whole bunch of guys from Britain. And of course, I was with Abdullah was there because we worked together. We were living in Medina, and many other people who were local. And so I remember seeing Bilal Davis that one time. But I believe, shaking his hand or something, Assalamu alaikum, meeting him, but that's about it. Yeah. Termites. Yeah, termites are, yeah. So that's why we don't want, I don't know. These are kind of like little termites. I know they're attracted to the lights out there. And because they see these lights, my screens are not perfect. So they have ways in. So I will have to turn these lights off in this section. So that way, I don't, attract these bugs. Can you make wudu over the socks for Fajr prayer? I think you mean, can you wipe over the socks for Fajr? So, yes, if it's within the 24-hour muddah. Okay, and again, those conditions that we just mentioned, that you have to enter into your socks or whatever that you're going to wipe over, you have to enter them in a state of tahara. So, for example, if you go to bed and you have no socks on, you break your wudu, and then you decide to put socks on, then Fajr comes. Can you wipe over your socks at that stage? And maybe I'll save it. Maybe I'll just say it. No, you can't, because you didn't enter them in a state of tahara. So this is what we just talked about. How do we do it? Well, I'm doing a whole and so many books about this. So we've talked a lot about this and have been talking about it. Is it permissible to stick to a few number of mashayikh and make them the gatekeepers of Salafiyah? I mean, those questions are already known. I mean, many people have lectured about it and talked about it. So I don't know. I don't see that as a beneficial question. We already know that. No, that's not permissible. And of course, that's basically kind of like Hizbiyah. No. Oh, am I correct? Is it good to sleep? Yeah, you should have sleep with wudu. That's recommended. Now, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil, protect us from kulli su wa makruh, sallallahu alaihi wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad.